Bedrock is an online program with Michael Farinloye, your engineer on radio. And on this program, engineer Michael Farinloye, your engineer on radio, and other building professionals will come together to provide solutions to issues that are related to construction, engineering, real estate, security, and built environment in general, with the intention of some people live and work in a safe, conducive, and comfortable environment. Join us on Facebook Live every Friday by 4 p.m. on the Bedrock with Michael Farinloye Facebook page. For sponsorship and adverts or inquiries, please call 070 31 37 37 69. Once again, 070 31 37 37 69. The Bedrock on Facebook Live. Join us now and learn from building professionals.
Yes, what a beautiful Friday. Wherever we are throughout the globe, I welcome you to another edition, another episode of the Bedrock with Michael Farinloye. How are we today? Whatever time it might be, wherever you are. This is 4 p.m. West African time here. I welcome you to this beautiful episode. And I want to appreciate all our viewers who have joined us right away now. I want to thank you all for joining us on this new episode. And I'm assuring you that you are here not to waste your time. There is a lot you gain from what we are going to discuss here this very afternoon. I have my guests already with me. And together we'll be discussing the topic we call overbuilding. Overbuilding. That's the topic we want to treat this very afternoon. Overbuilding. Is it possible to overbuild? What is overbuilding? And some other likely questions will be coming up this very afternoon on that topic, overbuilding. You are free to start sending in your comments. You have questions you want to ask. You have contributions, and you also have one comment or the other. Send it via the comment section. We will do justice to that. Let me be introducing my guest for this very episode. He's an architect. He's a lecturer at the Department of Architecture of Bafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Osun State, Nigeria, West Africa. He has been on this program before. He is like a very real boss to so many of us. And I so much want to appreciate him for giving his time again to be here this very afternoon. It's no other person but architect Jide Onabanjo. Sir, thank you for joining me on this program this very afternoon once again. Thank you so much.
It's a good pleasure to be on the program again. Thank you for inviting me again.
I know you are a very, very busy person, but despite that, you never look down on anyone. I want to commend you on that. That's one of the qualities I love about you. You don't look down on anyone. Without wasting our time, we go straight to the discussion. Overbuilding. Let me say once again, this is the Bedrock with Michael Farinloye, where we talk about the issues that are related to built environment. Just to enlighten and educate both the professionals and not the professionals. And it's also an opportunity to open our mind to business that are related to built environment sector. So you are at the right place if you are on Bedrock with Michael Farinloye. I want you to start sharing it as you are watching. Start sharing it to friends, to colleagues, so that they can also be part of our discussion this very afternoon. And like I said, we are talking on the topic we call overbuilding. Overbuilding. So I'll go straight to the discussion with my guests. Architect Jide Onabanjo. Sir, once again, you are welcome on the program for today.
Thank you.
So my very first question is, what is overbuilding?
This is a phenomenon that is in current discussion in the built environment. It's actually defined this way. That is, you have overbuilding is when there is growth in the building assets exceeding demand. Just like you say in economics, when you have surplus, that's generally the definition. But it goes beyond just the assets. It could be at different level. It could be at the building level, it could be at the community level, it could be at the city level, and could be at the national level. And this is about really land use, because we have a finite land use, a finite land. And if you must use it appropriately at all times, you must have a plan for how you want to use the land and try to be sure that land use planning works well with the plan that is had in mind, so that things can work sequentially with the thoughts and the direction of planning. But when we do a little bit more, then it can disturb the scenario. Usually the examples that are given when we're talking about overbuilding, it's about the phenomenon of empty speculative commercial offices in Australia, for example, where they have so many commercial buildings built, nobody occupying them. Or the phenomenon of underpopulated residential buildings in China, in some of the cities, where they already have some buildings built, planned, built, but they're yet unoccupied. Nobody's coming there yet. They're expecting movement of people and transition. Those are very good places where they have plans ahead and they meet their plans and their targets. But unfortunately, sometimes overbuilding happens in those areas. Well, for them, it's a good thing, phenomenon, but we've got to think in underdeveloped or developing nations too, there are issues of overbuilding, not in that direction, but in the direction that are not positive. For example, where you have overpopulation, urban sprawling, deforestation, and things like that, it's a problem of overbuilding too. That is, we have a land use plan, we're not adhering to it, and we're doing more on some land use than the other. And of course, it brings about negative impact on the population and of course on the environment on the long run. So it's a phenomenon we've got to talk about. We've got to continually have discussions about it. And it's always a good thing to do because it's a strategic building phenomenon, which planners, especially local planners, got to keep thinking about so that we can be sure we're doing ourselves well in our planning for our environment.
Thank you so much, sir. I can get some points from what you have just given us. And like you said, I think over time, we need to continue to talk about this overbuilding because it's really causing a lot of havoc on our environment. And two things I was able to pick from what you have the definition you have just given to us. It's possible to build and nobody is occupying that building, whether for commercial purpose. You cite the example of Australia and China. So that means if you build and at the end of the day for years nobody is occupying it, you are overbuilding. I want to get it correctly, sir.
Yeah, because you have an asset which you haven't put to good use.
Yeah.
So in one way, it's overbuilt more than you require.
Building more than you require. Okay. Then you also make mention of overbuilding can come up in different dimensions, talking about individuals on maybe a site, as in a city, in a country, and so on and so forth like that. Does it mean maybe if proper planning are not done, necessary setback are not done, and at the end of the day, we are having more building sited in a city? Is that what you are trying to tell us, sir?
Let's take some examples so we can buttress the points so it can be clearer.
Okay.
For example, let's take it on a local site level, on a building scale. Sometimes you get requirements from your clients who says, I just like large bedrooms. I just like it large. Sometimes they will ask for what they don't know. The size of a 2 garage, they want it for 1 bedroom. And when it's built and it's done, how many stays there? What happens in that bedroom? Then they then behold a large space and they're wondering what they can use that space into. When they can't find full use for that space, it then becomes an overbuilt thing. That's one. Another way to look at it is, for example, you've built a house and you have built more than what the local planning authority have agreed that you should build in that area. Because depending on the area and the location, there are certain percentage of the land that they think your building footprint can be on, so that you can have other uses for the land around. For people to collect, to gather, for people to use the soil, for rubbish to be gathered, for treatment to be done, for air to be around the environment. So for example, they may say in a GRA, you should not build more than 30% of the land that you have allocated to you. If you do more than that, you have overbuilt. That will affect your footprint on the land. It will affect some generation of air. Trees that should be planted, shrubs, green that should be there, will be affected because you have overbuilt that land. Remember, human building, it's an impact on the natural environment. And we must find a balance between that impact of building on the natural environment so that the natural environment can also yield us of its own benefit. So we can have a symbiotic relationship and an adequate one. And that has to do with how we build, what we build with, and in what area we build. And that's why I said it can be at a building level, it can be at a street level, a community level, or at a national level. For example, again, if you look at some developing estates around, let's take a local environment at Ile-Ife. Most of the buildings are just sprawling. There are no plannings directly affecting what's going on. But meanwhile, the land that is being sprawling built as residential now were or used to be agricultural land. You then ask yourself, are we not tending towards food insecurity the more? Because where will the food be produced if we're taking over most of the agricultural land for residential planning now, for residential use? Have we changed land use? Have we secured new agricultural land elsewhere? These are issues. And we can't keep sprawling.
And
we've got to be able to plan.
It's still part of the overbuilding that we are talking about.
Yeah, it's part of the overbuilding, yeah.
The land that is reserved for agriculture, we are now building on it. It's overbuilding.
On it, doing residential planning. We're overbuilding. Because we've got to think not just about new development, sure. We've got to think of conservation of the ones we've built. We've got to think of conserving or rethinking of the ones we have built for new use, refurbishing. Those are needful things we've got to do to keep the built environment tidy and good. Not only new sites all the time. And by the time you are doing a new site, which means you are acquiring a new land use in some cases, or you are working within a land use appropriated for that space. You've got to be able to think through and be sure you are doing it rightly. And of course, also, we've got to think, if you are building high,
Okay.
And it has to be in a concentrated area.
Area.
Services to those places will matter. Services in terms of air, that will maybe get polluted. Overpopulation may happen. How do people get access to land, to play, to gather, and many other things? All those got to be thought about so that we can be sure we still, as social beings, can relate very well and have good health and well-being in those areas where we're living. And of course, in those new areas, we're opening up. But remember, in opening up a new area, it's a different land use or it's a different scenario that the built environment will do to the existing natural environment, and we've got to do it right if it must be sustainable.
Sir, I want you to help me to educate our viewers. You talk about 70-30%. That is, the most approval is to build on 30% of the land. The 70%, what are we expected to make use of the 70% for?
Okay, let's give another example.
Okay.
For example, if you buy land freehold, generally from vendors in town, the sizes are different from what you buy if you buy from government. That's because one is thinking about area you can build and that area must be satisfiable. The other is not. So in town, they will generally tell you buy 2-3 plots so that it can be enough for what you want to do. They should have given you enough as one plot to build. For example, if you take the one plot, just the minimum setback required by law for you from the perimeter of the building, that is set out for small residential places, 3 meters from the perimeter. By the time you do it that for a land that is just about 600 square meters, you're already at 50%. That's the maximum you can do. But the law says you don't build up to 50%. So you then think, what and how do you get parking on that land if you have a multiple occupation? How do you get the water treated on that land? Because government hasn't been doing that. They have left that that work to individuals.
Yes.
How do you get your power or alternate power supply on that land? How do you get your rubbish collected or distributed or treated on that land? You need areas for that. Or minimally, just think about how do children who are raised in that environment, where do they play? Where do they spread their clothes? If they say they want to be on the outdoor, under trees, where will those be planted? Still within those setbacks? No, it won't be good enough. So you see the difference that it means if a government residential estate gives you a 2,000 square meter for housing, rather than the 600 square meters you are buying individual plots of land. And then you think you want to put the same quality building on both sides. No, you are not going to arrive at the same thing. Obviously, one will be overbuilt, the other will not be. That will affect population. People then think, well, we need other partners on the land. Oh, let's make it speculative. Let's have story building so that we can have others for occupation. That means more occupation on the same sites. That is meant for one. Meanwhile, if you have asked for an appropriate site that you want to do a development for speculative building, yeah, you'll then get appropriate size and area from the local government if they do the layout properly, and then you'll be able to know where and how you can build. And they will give you the criteria so that you then build appropriately to specifications so that you can help the environment and others around within that setup. So it won't just be you thinking of your own land singly while the other is doing something else in your neighborhood. So by the time you accumulate that to a street, a community, it can then give you an impact of what kind of environment they can have in such a place. Similarly, such little things make the difference between what the layout of the University of Lagos, Akoka, is like, because they don't have so much land compared to the layout you have on the Obafemi Awolowo University campus. They're both universities doing about the same thing, but because of appropriateness of the cities, the planning, and the outlook for overbuilding makes the two different. of course, the impact it has on the environment in those places and the people thereof are different for the two.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, sir. In short, many things that our people are ignorant of, especially in this our nation, Nigeria, and as a continent in Africa. Overbuilding. So many people don't, even some professionals don't really bothers about it. And I so much love the way we are uh, doing justice to that topic this very afternoon. Overbuilding. Architect Gideon Nambanjo has been able to tell us and give a lot of scenario, a lot of examples of how you can overbuild your site and how you can overbuild your city. Even it got to a nation. He made use of he made Unilag, University of Lagos, Akoka, as as a comparison with Obafemi Awolowo University, which I want people who are interested. You visit Akoka, Unilag, and also visit Obafemi Awolowo University. Here, you will know is making a very good example because it's something I know very well. When you get to Obafemi Awolowo University here, there is a lot of space around, not overbuilt as some places are. So without wasting our time, for our viewers to just know that we are not just talking about overbuilding, although a lot of things are being done wrongly, talking about overbuilding, especially in this nation, that is just the truth. But for us to be able to do the things and do it in the right way is one of the major reasons why we are bringing this topic at this very particular time. And like my guest has rightly said, we need to continue to talk about it time to time until we have changes. So very quickly, I want us to go and look at the impact of overbuilding on people and planet. I think if we are able to look at that and we are able to enlighten our people and educate them, maybe from there we'll gradually we'll be having some change of mind so that we know we are doing ourselves a lot of havoc, having our site overbuilt or having our cities overbuilt and as a nation too. So, sir, what are the impacts of overbuilding on people and planet?
Overbuilding has lots of impacts, but we'll take about a few of them. First, we must understand building process is one of the main thing that's a lot of resources that we have naturally. And we're even told that building as a system produces about 25 to 50% of the carbon footprint worldwide. So depending on how much we're building, you will have direct impact on resources available and then on a carbon footprint available. So we've got to manage how we packed those to start with, because we must take that from the natural resource to build. And then while we're building, the process of getting materials converted and the process of building gives us some footprints that is still detrimental to our environment in some way. So we've got to be able to manage and juxtapose those so that we can be sure we're doing it rightly and not negatively affecting ourselves in some major ways. The other way to look at it also is it affects our economy. This brings to mind, if you remember, but some time back, we were told there was a building being built at Ikoyi, Lagos, which was approved for 14-story, extension of approval to 16, but the developer wants to carry it on to 21 floors. And unfortunately, one of the twin towers fell. That's a loss of resource. If you imagine how much has gone into that, that's simply because he was going to overbuild. It's not yet occupied, but we have lost lots of resource. That the resource lost there cannot be reclaimed. Some of it will just have to be taken to some landfills. We've got to provide land for that too. We've got to provide transport for that. Additional resource wasted. But meanwhile, the end has not been justified because we're not getting those states and those apartments as needful. That's one way, another way to look at it. Another way to look at it is that we must remember when we overbuild, we are asking for overpopulation. That has effects on our well-being and our lifestyle. When we overbuild, also, we are asking that we are going to get the place polluted by air because we human beings give out carbon dioxide and we need to take in oxygen. If we're more than in that area can provide or the needful suburb can sink, then we'll be polluting the air. If there are too many industries nearby, the air also will be polluted. We won't have good enough air breathing. We've got to do some other things to get good enough. But if we have the natural environment balancing it up, we have trees planted to help this, so we can have a good symbiotic exchange. While we give the carbon, the trees will give us oxygen. That will make a good balance. So we can have overpopulation, we can have air pollution, and I was going on to say deforestation will be another issue. Because if you must do a new project, you've got to do some deforestation. While we'll do that, we must also put in mind, while we're planning the new project, that we have good enough forestation we've got to do on that project. Those who campaign for green architecture, which is good and sustainable, also have that much of what you remove is much of what you should plant on the buildings, so that you can have a balance, so that we can have the ecosystem go on. Right, that's helpful. So we got to key on green buildings and make this work for us. Then we can have some good balance. We could also have overfishing. It's about overbuilding. When you take too much fish from the area of the sea for food, you may lose out on the population there. You could also have over tourism. When you visit a place too much, too many people visit the same place and things like that. It could happen, it could affect overexposure of land area too. There will be impacts. For example, if you take the new roads we're doing and things, especially the new ones that is to be going from east-west axis in our nation, Nigeria now, it's going to open up new vistas. Those areas will be opened up to some other things that haven't been used to before. The natural phenomenon in those areas got to move to some other areas, but the new things we got to put there will matter, whether those areas will now be sustainable or not. The new outlook that they will wear. How we take time to do all those will matter to the environment we are creating and to the people who will live in that environment, to make them sustainable or otherwise within this environment that will be opened up to when the new roads and the new projects are done. So we got to mind and be sure. And there's a call for our local planners that we've got to sit on top of all we're doing and all the new things that happen in our environment, so that we're sure they mean well and they will give us a good environment on the long run, so that we can be a better place for us all to live in.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I want to, okay, maybe, okay, let's do it this way. Let's go on a very short break now. When we return, we continue with the discussion. We still have 1 or 2, 3 points to make before we bring this episode to an end. So my guest for some minutes now has been architect Gideon Obanjo, a lecturer at the Department of Architecture of Bafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Osun State, Nigeria, West Africa. So if you are just joining us, you are on to the Bedrock with Michael Farinloye, a program that comes up on Facebook page and our YouTube channel, The Bedrock with Michael Farinloye. It comes up every Friday, 4 p.m. West African time. So you can always join us. If this is your first time of joining us, you can always join us on a weekly basis. It's every Friday. So you can start sending your comments, start sending your contribution. If you have questions via the comment section. We want to go on a very short break now. By the time we come back, I am promising you this concluding part is one you should not miss at all, because we still have 1, 2, 3 points to still give. So stay tuned. We'll be back.
The Bedrock is an online program with Michael Farinloye, your engineer on radio. And on this program, engineer Michael Farinloye, your engineer on radio, and other building professionals will come together to provide solutions to issues that are related to construction, engineering, real estate, security, and built environment in general, with the intention of some people live and work in a safe, conducive, and comfortable environment. Join us on Facebook Live every Friday by 4 p.m. on The Bedrock with Michael Farinloye Facebook page. For sponsorship and adverts or inquiries, please call 070-31-37-37-69. Once again, 070-31-37-37-69. The Bedrock on Facebook Live. Join us now and learn from building professionals. Tegri Associate Limited is a registered company with the capacity to give you the best of services. Tegri Associates Limited in a wide range of areas ranging from design, costing, construction, site supervision, development and delivery of homes and public infrastructures. Our team of construction professionals offers a single source solution for all construction related needs, be it restoration, site preparation, facility or infrastructure renovation and the likes. We are also into real estate. We have the experience and personnel to provide the highest quality construction on schedule and within budget. We support clients from project inception to the commissioning of the fully operational facility, transforming clients' dreams into reality, and offer deep professional advices in arriving at the best possible results. Client satisfaction is our ultimate goal, and we serve with integrity and focus. Tegri Associate Limited is registered with CAC red number 6978970 and office 30 Olufemi Ajayi Street, College Bus Stop, Ifakwijaye, Lagos State. Osun State Office, House 31, Ifesuwapo Quarters, Zone 6, Agric, Opa, Ilefe, Osun State. Telephone 091-6619-3114. Website www.tegriassociateltd.com.ng.
I welcome all our viewers to this second segment of today's episode, The Bedrock with Michael Farinloye. I also welcome my guests back on this second segment of The Bedrock with Michael Farinloye. Sir, thank you for joining us again. That's architect Gideon Obanjo. He's a lecturer in the Department of Architecture of Bafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, in Osun State, Nigeria. So we go on with what we have been discussing for about a few minutes now, overbuilding. That's the topic we have been discussing for about 4 minutes now, overbuilding. My guest has been able to explain and give so many examples and scenarios to be able to allow us to understand what we mean by overbuilding. And he has talked about so many impacts that overbuilding has on people and planet. People and this planet we find ourselves as human beings. He has been able to explain so many impacts to us. In this second segment, okay, let me start because I have about 3 questions. I do about 4 questions, and I want us to go as far as possible. Our viewers, you can start sending your comments. Continue to send in your comments, continue to send in your observation, continue to send in your questions. Contributions is important. So also help us to share this episode as much as you can. Sir, once again, you are welcome back to this second segment.
The pleasure of being here again.
Okay, overbuilding. That's the topic we have been discussing. Sir, I want to ask this question. We talk about overbuilding, especially in this our nation, Nigeria. And something just struck my mind when we go on that short break, that even despite the overbuilding that we are having here and there in this nation, still yet we are still having issues with housing, accommodation for our people, especially in the cities. What do you have to say about this, sir?
Well, one of the major things that is making that to come to be is about our planning. Planning. Some say when you don't plan, then you have planned to fail.
Sorry, sir, the volume, sir, volume.
I said one of the major things that affect that for us on this side of the divide is planning.
Okay.
And the saying says, when you don't plan, then you have planned to fail.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So if we look at it with respect to our housing need, we should, by planning, have an idea how many we are and where we reside. Where are those areas where we want the next generation to reside? Have an idea of figures and plan for that. So we know that development will go in this direction. As I speak, I'm not certain. There are figures that shows how cities in Nigeria and some states are to grow. It then becomes difficult to know where you are going to put the housing, whether the housing will be adequate and will meet the requirements. But even in doing that, we should have an idea of what is the bulk we have, what can it take, so we then know what is then that we need. So if we are moving to an area, we know the need in that area and know what to put there. Also, our infrastructural development, because those will drive this need also. Because most of the housing we're doing now, they don't have the infrastructure. So of course, when you do them, they won't be very sustainable. The infrastructure should have gone ahead before the housing are there. These are some of the things that disrupt our present planning, that makes even us have overpopulation in some area, underpopulation in an area, and deficit of housing that is needed to put the people together. We need to plan and plan aright. And beyond planning, we need to implement and bring to pass aright too. Those are issues. And it's about willingness of government to put their mouth and their money where they have put their mouth. Because they promise this and that, but they're not putting the money there and the infrastructure and the enablement there. Because most of what we have in our cities these days, it's less than to think about that there's any planning going on. We need to plan and effectively bring about the plan to right. Meanwhile, when you plan, it's not just something you do in your own dark room. It's got to be brought to the open for those who have been planned for to understand, so that they can buy in, so that all stakeholders know what direction and what we are doing and what we intend to do. So we all can go along and know what to do and fit in appropriately. We must all buy in, but when it's just done, hidden somewhere, nobody knows, it becomes difficult for everybody to walk along and be synergizing and getting the same result. So, in essence, we got to plan and get good people to plan for us. And then the plan must be bought, accepted by all the stakeholders. And then we must implement it right. And everybody should be involved. In this, when we use the right professionals and the right tools, we should get some good results on our side. Thank you.
Short, I discover in answering that question, you lay emphasis on planning and planning aright. And you also talks about implement aright. Because one thing is to plan, Another thing is to plan right. And one thing is to also plan and don't implement it. So I love the way you have put it. But I still want to ask, before we leave that particular area, who are the people that are supposed to plan for us? Because you talked about they need to plan and also make use of professionals in doing the planning. Who are to plan for us?
Well, when we say planners, we're not just talking about just the town planners alone.
Okay.
Town planners, like the name says, they plan our towns, our cities. But planning involves economic planners, infrastructural planners, architects, and many more in the built environment. Because some need to think it ahead, see the vision. Others need to understand the vision, break it down, and make it understandable to what are the issues at hand and what are the tools it will need to be implemented, and put a cost to it. Then you can then begin to implement as you make the fabrics of what are being planned available. Meanwhile, this will involve land, men, and economics. Where some are missing, you won't get it right. So we got to be able to put all these tools together. And I may let you know, I think we have enough of the capability. We need to just sit down, put heads together, and help ourselves. Because all this will not come from some others. We are the ones who got to live through this. We are the ones who understand ourselves. And some have this training and capability. We should be able to work together and synergize and get things done appropriately. But there must be willingness and openness on the part of government and those who are leaders in order to imbibe and take on this and not just make a politics of it, so that we can have good implementation over time and in many places, as the case may be.
And not just to make politics of it. I love that statement too. And I just pray we do it right, because the way you have put it, we just need to plan ourselves. We don't need to bring anyone from any other continent to come and do it for us. We can do it ourselves. Is that not what you are saying, sir?
Very well. And that's why we need many more, because the number counts. We just don't need a few, we need many. And when we have many trained and well-trained, knowledgeable and capable, then we should be able to pull resources together, because there's strength in number. If the same people are saying the same thing in the same direction, and that they can do it that way, yeah, it will make more sense. Rather than a few going this direction and another pulling it the other direction. Then we don't get things done. So we need the togetherness, we need the planning, we need the direction to go, and the understanding of that direction.
Thank you, sir. Still on talking about the overbuilding stuff, I want to ask, in other continents apart from Africa that we are residing, is there anything like overbuilding in so many other continents? You have talked about in Australia, you have talked about in China. Is there any other part of the globe where we have overbuilding?
Yes, it happens in many climes. It's not just us.
Okay.
Where us becomes rather devastating and untold is because we're still a developing nation. Many of the developed nations understand this over time. They've learned some of these things by experience and by reality. For example, the area of England and landmass has not increased, except for a few areas where they have sandfield to increase some parts. So how have they been going over centuries as a nation? Yeah, they've used some areas and they're reusing. And they concentrate the cities. They don't let just sprawls happen. Where it happened in the past, they have pulled down and reconstructed on the same place. So if you find some areas, they'll tell you when you buy those properties or that land, dig, know what has happened there before, be sure it's suitable for the new use you want to put it to. Because, for example, the place you may be buying maybe some few years back, or let's say 50 years back, may have been a dump yard or a landfill. If you don't dig and find out and understand what had happened there before, you may then be getting some results that won't be helpful in a few years' time. But good enough for us. Most of us are still virgin. Most of our own land are still virgin. And we need to learn and learn fast. That's where the advantage for us is. We don't need to go through all the mistakes they have made in those nations. We can learn from those experiences and be sure we walk in a good direction. We don't have to build like China do. We don't have to build like America does. We've got to know what's appropriate for us, use the right material appropriate for us. We don't have to have everything imported. Our fathers have been building, but we must understand we need to build better than that and do appropriation for that. But technologies that are appropriate or that can be transferable that we need, we can get those. But we don't need all the state of the art all the time to make progress. That's really the issue. So we don't need in all our cities what we're building in the new Lagos, the Atlantic. We don't need that all over the nation. Maybe in Lagos where it's near water. But then we need something more cordial, more responsive, more touching, more down to earth in the hinterlands, because that's where we have the land. And the land is still available. So we need to build the right, locate ourselves the right, build with the appropriate materials that are available and that are sustainable, so we can be sure we have a good livelihood, and then we're building what will last for generations yet to come. Then we'll have a right thing, and we'll have a right goal. I think that's the appropriate way to do it. And we must use the right manpower to establish and to get this right too.
The global warming. How can we relate overbuilding with global warming? Is overbuilding one of the factors that contribute to the global warming we are experiencing in the world today?
Certainly, yes. Yes, and the wise that
your volume.
Huh?
Oh yeah, you can go ahead.
We'll say certainly yes.
Okay.
Because when we say building, it's not just building for residential purposes we are thinking. More is for industrial. And those are the ones that fit our global landscape. Because when you are doing for industrial, you are clearing a lot of land. And then beyond just the clearing that you are deforesting, you are then introducing fossil fuels, which are used in the industrial locations. And those will burn and give away plenty of carbon dioxide, which, along with monoxides, affect our ozone layer. There have been discussions here and there on global warming here and there. The attitude is supposed to be that everybody takes responsibility while you are engaging in industrial output that will do that. Find some ways to reduce on your emissions and building a little bit more forest that can help you fuse it and reduce on that. But unfortunately, the global West gives blame and gives blame to the global East, leaving the global South as if we're not concerned. Meanwhile, all the impacts affects us more on the global South. For example, I just read a report. Guyana has just found new source of good oil in their area. And some journalists, a British, has gone trying to tutor them and tell them they need to take responsibility. And the president of Guyana has to put it directly to them. Come. In the whole of UK, where are the forests? Because in Guyana, they have a forest that's as big as UK and Scotland together. So even if they are just starting in processing some fossil fuel, they have enough swamp and enough sink for it to absorb all those. So it's not enough for one country to pontificate for another. It's a joint responsibility. But because what we do each individually affects all globally. And when it's done heavily in some area and not mitigated, all of us will feel it, not just one area as well. That's really where the real issues are. All of us will feel it. But of course, the feeling and the depth of how it will affect all of us will now depend on what is interpreted to mean and how it's affecting us individually in those areas. Because generally, the earth is getting hotter than it used to be. And that's because the ozone layer has been depleted. So more heat from the sun that will have been sifted comes in directly. And that means also that the ice at the North Pole and South Pole are melting. That means there's more water in the oceans. That could mean that the perimeters, those areas near the oceans, may get tides, may have higher rises of water than they used to be before. Where those lies will matter. It also means potable water may not be as available as it was before. Because if there is rise in the ocean, that means there can be inroad into the inside. Let me give you a probable example. If there's rise in the Atlantic Ocean near Lagos now, many areas in Long Lagos will be submerged. And that submersion can go as far as Lekki because the lagoon is lower than the ocean, which means more water will come from the ocean into the lagoon.
Yes.
And Lekki is surrounded by the lagoon and the ocean. That means, of course, there will be a higher tide. That means some areas may be submerged. These are issues. And it's not directly only what we do here, but what others do elsewhere, maybe as far as Europe, could affect what will affect us here. That's why we've got to look at it together and be sincere to the protocols we are put in place or put in place in order to mitigate the global warming so that it can be a better place for us all on the long run.
So if I get you right, the issue we are still having with global warming is that we are not working together to find solutions to it.
Yeah.
So I think
because really the major problems come from the industrialized nations that are burning fossil fuels and giving the emissions that is causing this global warming. The undeveloped South, global South, is not doing much in that respect, but they're bearing some of the brunt of what the industrialized global North is doing. So we're asking and we're agreeing, but they're not following through. They're not putting their mouth or put their money where the mouth is in order to be helpful in mitigating some of the effects.
May I ask, although what we are talking about is overbuilding, but you have really exposed some issues concerning the global warming. May I ask, what do you think can be the solution then? Because they are not cooperating, especially where the issue is much coming from, the developed countries, and whereas the underdeveloped nations or developing nations are the ones who are feeling the heat. What do we think can be the solution, despite that they are not cooperating?
There are solutions, and those are part of the protocols that have been put in place. One, reduction of waste. If we reduce our waste from design, we'll have less that will be disturbing in the environment. That's one way. Another way is renewable resources must be managed properly.
Renewable resources.
Oil, water, all these things we have are resources. In our soil, below our land, we've got to manage them properly. Because when we don't manage them properly, they become a sore unto us, become heavy problems. And that's part of what is causing this program warming. Because we have resources we're using, but we're overusing. We're not managing properly. Also, we must know our lands that we have and plan uses for them. Of course, these uses can change time over time, but we must have plans for them, so that those that seemingly are left fallow for a period can be used for some of the other things that will be helpful in promoting this global reduction of this global warming. For example, across Africa, I remember the AU, African Union of Architects, made a proposal to the International Union of Architects that they have a belt, a green belt across the Sahara, so that that can promote a new development of states and indeed of a new vegetation line across that area. Yes, those proposals have been made, thoughts have been deposited, but actions are yet to follow. Obviously, the states around that area may not be only able to foot the bills to do this implementation, but they need help from the global north too in implementing it. Because if it's done, it will help first the states that are involved, but of course, globally affect us all and the kind of environment we'll have on the long run. Those little steps matter, and it's helpful that we work together. Because when we say warming across the globe, it does not matter where we draw the line separating the countries. It doesn't respect that. It affects us all together.
Yes.
That's really the challenge. So we got to manage ourselves aright so that we can mitigate all these effects properly as we see fit. So,
thank you for that, sir. Overbuilding is still the topic we are discussing for about few minutes. Like I usually say on every episode like this, take your time to go back and watch it again. You see that there's a lot you gain. On a final note, how do we overcome this issue of overbuilding, sir? Maybe in the next 3 minutes, because we are taking
overcoming means first we must learn that air. Be sure we understand what we're talking about and how it affects us all. And then take a proactive measure. Let those who have the capacity help us. We must develop land use plan for our areas. We must have control measures for land use development. We must conserve some already existing efforts of things that have been done that can last and are lasting. So it's not everything about total rebuilding. We must conserve some. We must renew our efforts at dealing with those areas where we have had population overblown, overgrowth, and things like that. We must rethink our efforts there to make the places better so that we can have well-being. We must be sure that our renewable resources are well managed and controlled. We need to reduce on our wastes and be sure we can reuse some, recycle some before we go for landfilling, so that we can have the benefit of maximization of these that we generate, because there are resources that come from our being populated in areas where we live. And then we must build appropriately. We don't have to copy Europe or copy the West. There are things that are good for us and better that we do it how we've been doing it than how the Europeans do it for themselves. We have a different climate. We have a different land. We must build appropriately as our land permits. And let's do it together so that we can sustain it together. I think these are the measures I will ask us to do. And we avoid overfishing, we avoid overcrowding, and we avoid heavy deforestation as the case may be. Doing this will help us manage well our resource and not overbuild for any purpose. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. We must build appropriately. as our land and climate permit. I love that. Thank you so much. I've been hosting architect Jide Onabanjo for more than an hour now. In short, I'm so much grateful for you for giving me this much of your time today. I know you are very, very busy, but notwithstanding, you still give much of your time, more than expected. Thank you so much for coming on this very episode of the Bedrock with Michael Farinloye. He's a lecturer in the Department of Architecture of Bafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Osun State, and Jide Onabanjo, architect Jide Onabanjo. Thanks so much. I'm very grateful. And I believe every time I call on you again, you will always answer to our call on the Bedrock with Michael Farinloye. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. I'm grateful. Like my language says, Mumolo Reo. Thanks so much, sir. So our viewers.
Okay, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Yes, sir. Our viewers at home, we thank you also for being there. We thank you for watching this episode. And we have come to an end of this episode. Like I always encourage you, still go back, watch it. Do according to what we have advised. And those who, every point we made, those who are concerned to take one step or the other, let them do. So that we live and work in a conducive and comfortable environment. That's the purpose of this podcast, The Bedrock with Michael Farinloye. This is where we'll be calling it a day till we meet again next Friday, 4 p.m. West African time. I still remain my humble self, Michael Omowale Farinloye, also known as your engineer on radio. Bye for now.
Bedrock is an online program with Michael Farinloye, your engineer on radio. And on this program, engineer Michael Farinloye, your engineer on radio, and other building professionals will come together to provide solutions to issues that are related to construction, engineering, real estate, security, and built environment in general, with the intention of some people live and work in a safe, conducive, and comfortable environment. Join us on Facebook Live every Friday by 4 p.m. on the Bedrock with Michael Farinloye Facebook page. For sponsorship and adverts or inquiries, please call 070 31 37 37 69. Once again, 070 31 37 37 69. The Bedrock on Facebook Live. Join us now and learn from building professionals.